back to our 13th episode of the Launch Your Farm Show, where I interview Britt Dixon with Britt Dixon Media. Britt and I discuss how she went from telling other people's stories as a news reporter to helping small businesses learn to tell their stories. One of the things that Britt is super passionate about is helping businesses get their message and story out into the world and online by helping them create content that resonates with their ideal clients. In this episode, Britt and I talk about how to create a plan for your online content to stay consistent with your messaging. Britt also shares why it's critical to figure out who your ideal client and audience is and how to connect and create content that will resonate with them. We also talk about what you can do to create a great story that hooks your audience and keeps them coming back for more of your message. Britt also shares a super easy way to ask questions to become a better interviewer so you can get a great story out of your guests. And we also talk about how you can build relationships with news reporters to position yourself as the expert and have them coming back to you for free publicity. Plus, we talk about a ton of other strategies and ideas that you can use to build great content for your farm. So be sure to check out this episode, like and subscribe, and enjoy the interview with Britt. Thanks for joining us on the Launch Your Farm Show. We've got a great guest. It's Britt Dixon from Britt Dixon Media. So Britt, why don't you take a second, tell us a bit about yourself and a bit about why you're here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. So I am an entrepreneur. I actually started my own business this year, 2020, when the world's all changed. But my business, Britt Dixon Media, focuses on content creation and digital social media marketing. So it's the perfect time to do that because right now all eyes are online. And leveraging those social media channels to help their businesses. So that has been actually great. And I'm a former broadcast journalist. So I worked as an on-air reporter for several years, I think 15 plus years, sort of behind the scenes and then in front of the camera, telling stories. So I really try to base my business right now in terms of content creation, pulling those fundamentals, using those storytelling to create really authentic content and helping businesses share their stories that way. Because we all know the value of media, whether it be traditional media on television, which I did for years, but right now online media. And being able to create your own content to share your own message and really control the message there. So it's kind of like melding the best of both of those worlds together. So that's me.
That's awesome. And you've definitely got a really unique background and an approach. And that's part of why I wanted to have you on here, because you definitely bring a different perspective from, I've interviewed a lot of agents themselves. With your background, you've got a little bit more of a broader view of media and storytelling and sharing that. So that's why I want to dive into that today. So can we go back, start with your kind of career, how it got started, and then I want to go into how you ended up here today. So you said you've been in news, you've been in behind the scenes and in front of the camera. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I was always super curious growing up, always asking questions. I think I knew at a really young age that I wanted to be a news reporter. So I, did all the right things, volunteered for the paper at my school, volunteered for some papers in the local community and the cable channels and things like that. Worked my way up and worked at a local television station in Hamilton. Did some internships and some traveling sort of here and there, but the bulk of my career was spent in Hamilton at CHCH News, which was fantastic because it was a small enough newsroom that I got a lot of really great experience and a lot of great experience covering a multitude of stories. So it wasn't just one thing, it was a little bit of everything. Really connecting with people and learning how to tell their stories. And I think the most valuable skill that job gave me was not only, being on camera and being comfortable speaking on camera, but also connecting with people, being able to tell their stories, being able to share their stories in the most effective way possible. And now being able to turn that into helping businesses do that and helping them share their messages. And, it's not easy to jump in front of a camera and start talking about your business or your messaging. And, it took years of practice for me to do that as a news reporter. And, every day was a different story. Every day you sort of walked into the newsroom, you got your story that they assigned you that day. You started making phone calls, you went out, you did the interviews, you came back, you somehow slammed it all together for 6 o'clock and put it out there, as it always sort of worked out somehow. And then you shared that story. So there were so many valuable skills from that job. But then it sort of got to the point where I was telling the same stories over and over again. And, you know, I'm the kind of person who I need things like every day. I need them to be different. I really like thrive on those new challenges.
Yeah.
And where every day was different, telling news stories, you know, they were still sort of the same things over and over again that I was doing. And I saw that the landscape was changing. There was more focus on online. There was more focus on being able to create digital content and using social media channels. So I thought for me, this was just sort of a natural shift. And after I left CH News, I went to work at Brock University for a year in the Wine Research Institute there, because I grew up in Niagara and I love telling stories about wineries and wine and the industry there, which is so important to that area.
Yep.
A lot of them are small businesses, and I loved being able to help them share their stories. And, you know, while I got to tell a few of those stories at CH, you know, most of the focus there was hard news.
Yeah.
So I thought this was a great shift. I'm going to go work there and be able to help that industry build up some social media channels, build up some storytelling and some content creation side of things. And then I did that for about a year and a half, and did a bunch of wine courses while I was there, learned as much as I could. And then in January of 2020, took the leap to start my own business. A lot of my clients work in the wine industry. I'm super passionate about sharing those stories, whether it's, you know, winery or culinary tourism, that's sort of industry, I think, is all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are small business and such big drivers of the economy there, which I think is very important. So I really, when we talk about ideal clients, that is my ideal client, because I love that content. I'm very knowledgeable when it comes to that content. And I think when you can become an expert in what you're doing and what you're talking about, then that just raises your value even more. So I really enjoy working with those clients, but not all of my clients are in the wine industry. I also work with a bunch of clients in the finance industry, which I think they could be like those are two total opposites. But it keeps things interesting. And I really like the new challenges of sort of coming into a new business or a new industry and thinking, okay, how can we take what you do and leverage that into some really great storytelling to really connect with your audience and your ideal clients and your customers. So that got me to where I am now. So,
Awesome.
you know, it's all connected, but I think it's definitely evolved with the way people consume information has evolved.
So one of the things that we've been talking about on the show for the last few weeks is the importance of video, and you obviously are 100% aware of how important video is. And then one of the other big parts that I talked about is giving back to the community and highlighting and supporting the community. And with geographic farming in real estate, it's becoming the neighborhood specialists, becoming the expert in the area. And one of the ways that agents can really give back to their community is by highlighting the community. So for you, with your experience, you've been involved in the community, especially doing what you've done. And now, what are some ways that agents could get involved, get some ideas for stories? Because I find that's one way that agents struggle, is they don't know what to do. How do they get stories? How do they know what kind of topics should they talk about and things like that? So what would you suggest?
I think one of the best ways as a news reporter, when I was working in news, one of the best ways to get those story ideas and those unique story ideas and the stories that turned out to be the best stories was just being connected to the community.
Right.
You know, going out, talking with people. You know, I'd be at a social event or a party or a meeting, or it didn't matter where I was, but you start talking to people and they say something, and that, you know, you really want to find those ideas that come from what people are interested in. And the unique stories that are out there that someone might not know about. And even now when I work with clients, you know, we focus a lot on content marketing, and a lot of people say, well, what is content marketing? And I like to explain it. Content marketing, it's not about the goods or services that you sell. So obviously, as a real estate agent, you sell homes. That's what you do. But if you're going to create a loyal audience and an audience who's going to look to you as an expert, maybe they're not looking for a home right now, but you're positioning yourself as a thought leader or an authority or an expert in your industry, then when they are looking for someone, your name's going to come top of mind to them. And so I like to say, you know, content marketing is about offering your audience something that they can't get anywhere else. And, you know, whether that's a unique story idea, highlighting the community that you live in, why other people should want to live there, you know, tell those real unique stories. Anytime there's an origin story or a story about the history of something, you know, you really want to look to find what story can you tell people to get them really thinking and to get them saying, wow, that's interesting, I want to know more, and being able to come back for that original content that they can't get anywhere else.
And a lot of agents struggle with that content, and they just want to put out real estate content. And like you said, most people don't just want the real estate content. They want to know what's going on. And that's part of why I started this program, to teach people that it's more than just sharing real estate information. It's about building your brand in the community. It's about building the connections in the community, and it's about giving back. And when you start kind of dissecting yourself away from real estate itself and look more as the community itself and forget that you even did real estate, then you can start looking at what stories can I come up with? What things can I share? What content can I create? So
absolutely,
if someone is thinking about creating content, where would you start then? Because whether it's video or whether it's online or social media, like how does someone start coming up with a plan? Because that's where a lot of times agents struggle too. We go, okay, how much do I send? What do I send? How often? What do I do?
Well, I like to say, come up with, how do you provide value? Who's your ideal client? Who's your audience going to be? And then what are your goals? What do you want to achieve through the content that you're creating? Why are you creating the content? Who are you creating it for? What message do you want to get out there? And then once you can sort of narrow down this little niche of what you want to what's your takeaway from that, then you can start thinking about, okay, how do I reach that clientele? How do I reach that audience? What kind of things are going to appeal to them? How do I, connect with them like people? Because we all know people connect with people. So what's going to really interest them and what's going to bring them in? It's probably not going to be a piece of content that has a whole bunch of statistics about, various things that they might look at and feel overwhelmed, but maybe pull out one of those statistics about, something that has to do with the community, or something that you can really hook them in with to then tell a story about. And I think if we really think about creating content as storytelling, whether it's a short, quick video or something that's a little bit more long form, people love stories. They love to be entertained. So we just have to think of a way to do that. And a lot of the times it's asking yourself, what makes me unique? What makes this community unique? What is interesting about, the people behind the business? Or, maybe it's a community that has, a really old business that's been there forever, and you're highlighting this great aspect of it. Tell that story, that origin story. Share some personality about the people behind the business. It's really thinking about, what will people actually connect with?
Yeah, and in our industry, we tend to have people who want to focus about themselves. The agents want to brand themselves and get their face out there, and that can work. But I've been saying it for years that when you go to Geographic Farm, you go to the community, it's about the people in that, and can you share their story and not just your story? You can mix in your story and who you are within that, but really it's about, can you share their story? And that's where you're going to start seeing people really be attracted to what you have to say and what you have to share when they know that you care about the community.
Absolutely. And maybe, as a real estate agent, you have a client that you've helped find a home, and they were looking for something specific, and they have a family, and maybe it's even sharing, their story. Maybe they have a unique story, and then you weave yourself in by saying, like, here's this really great story that will really hook you in, and give you all the feels and all those things, and how that real estate agent helped them, helped find that home for them, that perfect family home, helps bring this together. So you sort of almost have to look like one step farther. Still, you can still find an authentic and relevant and real way to weave in your own messaging, but you can't go in with the hard sell, right? You've got to give people something first.
So what would you say to people who are afraid to be telling their story, or who may not be a good storyteller themselves? Is there any strategies or techniques they can use to kind of bring that out of themselves?
I think it's just asking all of those questions. We're always taught, like, right from way back in school, the who, what, why, when, how, like, it's really just thinking about that and asking the questions and thinking about, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be, it could be simple. It could be, a simple, let's just like ask some questions and get that story. And a lot of the times the conversation back and forth is really great. Like when I create content with my clients, I like to do it as an interview style. Even though I know they have key messages that they want to get out there, I don't want to script them. I just want to sit down, back to how I did in the news reporter days, and sit and ask them questions, because that's going to bring out their passion. That's going to bring out their most natural voice. And then, from that, there's maybe so I'll hear something that will spark another question. And then you get such a more natural, authentic story out of that. And then, a lot of the times in working on the public relations or the content creation side of things now, I have the luxury of saying, well, that sounded really good in that interview, but how about you just tweak it a little bit and say it like this, right? So I do get to control the message a little bit, but I think when you script something and, you're holding your paper right in front of the phone and you're trying to read it, like people can sense that and it doesn't come across as natural. So I just think, you don't be worried to, make a mistake, or you just be real. I think like when you're real and you can connect with people in a real way, then that just goes so much farther.
And like you said, the interview style takes the pressure off of you to have to come up with the content. And if you're interviewing someone who knows what they're talking about, you have to ask the questions and the conversation just facilitates itself because you're having the conversation with them rather than having to have this perfectly scripted, polished thing. I know myself when I started in video years ago, when I had a script, that's when I choked because it's like, if I knew I had to say that, then I would not do well. I'd rather just have a conversation. And like you said, the naturalness comes out and they can start seeing the genuine side of you when you just have the conversation with them.
Absolutely. And when I create content for my own social media channels, a lot of it is content that focuses around the wine industry because I work with a lot of clients in that wine industry. I want to position myself as a bit of an expert and a thought leader. So I create a lot of content around that. And I have done some wine courses. I know a lot about wine, but I am by no means a wine expert. There are lots of people who are wine experts, and a lot of my content, they're interviews, they're one-on-one with the winemakers, or I do a little Wine Wednesday series where I'll do a little, have you ever wondered how they get the bubbles in sparkling wine? And then I'm interviewing someone and asking the experts about it. So when you sort of put yourself in that position, in that interview style, then your content possibilities are endless.
Yeah, that's great. Now, one of the things I know that some people struggle with as well is how do I find people? You mentioned a couple ideas about connecting. Would you find is the appropriate way to reach out to people if they want to start interviewing or getting involved in the community? Is there a standard way? Is there a good way to do it for people to start making those connections?
I make so many connections on social media. Like I use Instagram for everything. And I think, for business to business, LinkedIn is such a powerful tool right now to be able to use. But nothing beats really just like picking up the phone and calling someone. But I do a lot of my research on Instagram. Like I'll, be scrolling through or searching hashtags that are relevant to my industry and the content that I want to be creating. And I will find other content and then other connections that I might think, oh, that would be a really great story. I'm going to reach out to them. So a lot of it is just, being narrowing down that niche where you want to be and then just doing the research into it and finding those stories.
Now, another question I get asked is how often and what should I be doing? Do you find there's too much information you can be putting out, and is there a limit that you think is not enough and too much, and what would that look like for someone?
I think the most important thing to remember is consistency is key. So if you don't have enough content to put something out every single day, then post every other day or post every third day. Don't throw out 5 pieces of content at the beginning of the week and then go 2 weeks without posting. So as long as you can remain consistent, because that consistency is going to continue to build your audience when you're looking to attract people on social media and build your engagement. I think, the best tools, I use a social media scheduler. I batch create my content. So I will have a day where I'll shoot a whole bunch of stuff. I always have a little notebook with me where I jot down ideas. And then when I get my setup done, I turn my lights on and I'll shoot a whole bunch of different videos, and then I'll work away at editing them. And then I'll schedule them out. But I think it's definitely consistency. And I think what a lot of people forget is that when you're creating content and you're pumping content out there, that's just half of it, right? You still need to then engage. You need to go and follow other people who are similar to you. You need to, if you just do an experiment, if you put out a piece of content and you get off your phone or wherever and then you leave it, you'll get some engagement on it. Yeah. But if you spend some time around when you're going to be posting, liking other people's things, commenting, then those people will definitely, you'll see that on your accounts as well. And a lot of the times I think that's what scares people away from social media and creating that content, because it's a lot of work. And I think that's why, a lot of my my clients, it was overwhelming for them. So that's why I do a lot of the work that I do, because it then takes the pressure off. So in terms of, social media strategy and coaching and even management, where I would go in there and be posting for them and responding to comments and things like that, because it is a big job.
Yes.
But it can be very rewarding, because you can really create those genuine connections on there. And, when you're looking at, if you're posting on, Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, all of those platforms, you might have some crossover when it comes to audience, but you might have different segments of people, because people prefer different platforms, right? So finding something like a social media scheduler where you can put out one post and it just goes out to all your different accounts, maximizing your time that way, I think is really beneficial as well.
And the way they communicate in each one of those platforms is very different as well. And then understanding that, I think, is an important part of getting yourself out there. It's not just posting it. Like you said, you don't just post it and leave. You may get some engagement, but understanding who's on there, why are they on there, what they like, what they don't like, and how do you actually engage with people in each of those is important.
Absolutely. And it's always changing, right? Like, even if you look at Instagram now has, you have your feed that you can post on, your grid, you have stories, you can create highlight icon reels, and you can post things up there, which if you're not using those, you should be, because that should be viewed as a landing page, right? When someone goes to your page, they should be able to read your bio, see what you're all about. Your first, 9 images, videos, whatever is there, should tell people what you do. Your highlights across the top, you can use those to share your story. They have reels now, which is very similar to TikTok. You can sort of show those behind the scenes, a little bit more fun. Like, it's constantly changing, so it's hard to keep up. But if you can, and if you can sort of figure that out and use all of those tools to benefit you, it's really, I think, about doing. Sometimes I do walkthroughs with clients where I say, okay, here's what you would do for your feed, or make sure you're using IGTV if you have longer videos. Sometimes it's just literally being able to sit down with someone who uses social media all the time and say, like, here's what you should be doing. Here's some tips and tricks. Here's some things that might benefit you.
There's a lot of agents in our industry that would need that help and want that help, I know, because some people aren't, and they're just getting onto social media and they're just starting to use it, and then that scares them away, and they just kind of get over that hump of figuring out the basics of it. They could really start figuring it's a lot easier, and they can actually have a solid plan in place. It's just getting over that, what do I actually do? Absolutely. So how much of your business is the consulting side of it? How much is actually helping them create content, and what does it look like for you?
So I do sort of different style packages depending on what clients are looking for. So I would do a content creation package where I might go in and take a couple of hours to shoot some video, and then leverage that into maybe a dozen social media clips for them to use, whether it's social media platforms or in email marketing campaigns, on websites, however they want to use it. But then a lot of those clients will then maybe decide to upgrade to a social media management or coaching strategy, so that we can then really roll out that content in the best, most effective way, whether they're, to align with their business goals. So we want your social media goals to align with your business goals as well. So, and it's really sort of coming up with the best plan and then being able to track that. And the best part about online marketing is that it's so much easier to track your metrics, to track your successes, to see what's working, see what's not, so that you can fix it, rather than, when we do print, or I think a lot of real estate agents, right, maybe they're getting away from it now, but it was very heavily print, postcards. I still get things in my mailbox. It's hard to track that. How many people looked at it? You don't know, right? Like how many, but if you're sending out either an email marketing campaign, or you're posting something on social media, you're asking them to click through a link, all of that can be tracked, especially if you have social media business pages, right? They all come with analytics that you can then see what's working, what's not, when your audience is on there, what they're most engaged with.
It's almost scary at how much information's on there, which it's good from a marketing perspective. It's good, but from a consumer perspective, it's a bit scary.
Yeah.
So one of the things that people think with social media is, if I just do it, it's good. And I always say, doing it is one thing, but doing the wrong thing is just as important to know what not to do. So what kind of things should agents, or anyone really, be not doing with social media instead of just getting out there?
I think that, obviously just going back to knowing when your audience is on there, knowing when is the best time to post. Like, I don't think you should just say, oh, I have an idea, I'm going to, throw something up on there. I think social media is all about strategy.
Yeah.
And especially because it takes so much time, you want to do it smart, right? So I think being able to sort of do a little bit, like I have this worksheet that I give to clients right when we sort of come on board and start working together. And it seems silly, but it's literally like a little audit of your social media account. Are you doing this? Does your bio, like it's a checklist basically. And it's a lot of things that I think get overlooked, but if you're going to spend the time investing in creating content on social media, then make sure that you're putting it out the most effective way possible. Because the last thing you want to do is post something, like when I ran my analytics, I was surprised that a lot of people were like 6 a.m. Monday morning, people are on there. I mean, maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but I have kids, so I don't work at 6 in the morning. I'm usually still sleeping. But like Monday morning, 6 a.m. So I thought, okay, I'm going to start scheduling some content Monday morning, 6 a.m. Let's see how it does. And yeah, like once you start to know your audience and your audience habits, then I think it's definitely worthwhile to delve into all of that rather than just throwing stuff out there.
And one of the things I'm a firm believer in is that the small changes over time across a lot of things make a big difference. And some people think they've got to double their business or to double their effectiveness, they have to double everything. And it's like a few more views here, a few more clicks here, a few more watches here, a few more shares here, spread out, really compounds the effectiveness of what you do. And it doesn't have to be this twice as many videos, twice as good of content, twice as many people to see it. It's just those small tweaks make.
Absolutely. And a lot of the time, so obviously when I create content, I will, I shoot everything on my iPhone. I use, I have the iPhone 11 Pro, the camera on there is just as good as any other video camera that I've ever worked with. So I shoot everything on my phone, but I've invested in some really great editing software. And so I, pride myself on creating custom graphics and doing, all these fancy edits. And sometimes it could be the simplest content, like, creating something in TikTok or on the Instagram reels that you don't think, for me, it's not always up to like the production quality that I would think, right? But then if it's a content that people are interested in, then they're going to be interested in it, right? I think the great part about more eyeballs being online, more people focusing on video and on social media marketing, you don't have to be an expert, so you can shoot things on your phone. You can create some content. Now, there are some expert tips that I would definitely suggest, like use a microphone. Like I have, AirPods in right now because I don't want you have your microphone and headphones as well, a tripod, great lighting. Like there are things that you can tell if you don't use those things. But really it's not super complicated anymore to put together some great content.
And like you said, is to put out different content. You don't know what people are going to respond to. When I started doing video 10 years ago, my old mortgage broker and I would put out videos and we put them out on a weekly basis. And there was things that we thought were going to be a hit and we got some views. And then there was other things where like we did a video on putting a basement apartment in your house. And that we got thousands of views and we were like blown away versus the other stuff we thought was going to be this really valuable stuff. So I think putting out content regularly and consistently, but stepping out of your comfort zone. If you have a specialty, talk about it, but do stuff that you may not normally do, and because you never know what your audience wants and what kind of information you can provide for them.
Yeah, and like I spend a lot of time, on social media, sort of researching trends and seeing what people are doing and what people are interested in. And whether it's on Instagram or TikTok is such a huge platform now because it allows you to be really creative. Those videos of, like some design tips, some house design tips, from a real estate agent who's an expert, who knows how to tell you how to style something to sell or even just to look great. That's great content. You could create, like, think about walking around a house, how do you style a bookshelf? How do you, organize? Like, I mean, as a real estate agent, you have a million tips. I remember when you were selling my house and I had a flower vase on the table and you were like, no, that's going to close off that room. We're going to move that. So like those tips, like that's tons of content that you could create right there. Right. So it's really thinking about ways to give people something that has an impact, rather than just saying to them, you should buy a house in this market because, or here's some numbers of this. Like, if you can say, here's a really great design tip that you can probably watch and then do yourself. that's great, right? That adds value.
Yeah, I say that all the time. It's like I've mentioned it earlier. It doesn't, and it shouldn't be about real estate. You want to kind of mix some of the real estate stuff in there, but it really should be about giving back and giving back to the community and letting them know what they want. And if you don't know, that's an opportunity. If you're trying to create content, do a survey. Talk to people in the community and say, what would you like to see? What kind of videos would you want to know about? Or what would you like to learn about? And that's a great touch point to go out there and get engaged with the community and find out what do they actually want to know, what would be beneficial to them. And there's a reason to communicate.
Yeah, I do that quite often on social media. I'll throw up a story or, put a comment out there asking like, what do you want to know? Like when I create wine content, what do you want to know more about? Is it one-on-one interviews with the winemakers? Is it wine facts? Is it this? Is it? And people will respond and they'll tell you what they're looking for. So you have a great resource out there to use.
And now, once they comment, you can go back and share it with those people and say, hey, you said you wanted to see this, and you've got an audience already who said they want to see that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I know people struggle with is sometimes not making the content, it's actually getting it out and promoting it. You can create good content, but if no one sees it, in my opinion, there's no point. So what tips do you have for people to actually get the content out there and get it in front of the right audience?
Okay. So first of all, I would say if you come up with a really great content idea, maximize it. So be able to repurpose it. So can you, take a really great idea, create a blog post, create a video for YouTube, pull something for Instagram, do something for an Instagram story. Like, don't let your one idea just sit in one place. So figure out how to repurpose that first of all. And then anytime you can engage with other people on social media. So if I'm going to tell a story about a winery or another small business, I'm going to tag them in all of those posts. They're going to then repurpose that. I put up a story the other day on Facebook about wine in cans. So it's the trend of wine in cans and how big this is getting. So there was 2 wineries, 2 winemakers that I interviewed, tagged each of them. And, sometimes you feel like you're being a bit obnoxious. Like I hashtag everything. But that one video, had thousands of views just on Facebook because then they share it. One of their friends shares it. Someone else shares it. Yeah. So, you need to, if you're going to spend time creating that content, first of all, repurpose it and then figure out how to get that out there to the most people possible by tagging people, by, I'm a contributor for an online online media that focuses on wine. And I'll do a screen grab of my stories and I'll put it into this cool app to bring it up on Instagram, and then I'll tag them on it. Don't be shy to let people know all the great things that you're doing. Sometimes you think that it might feel obnoxious, but you share, you tag, you put your stuff out there and be proud of that because you're creating original content, which is fantastic.
And I think asking them to share it as well, especially if you're doing interviews, we assume that they're just going to share it because they've done it, or that you've interviewed them, and sometimes they don't have the time or they're afraid to what do I say? So sometimes you can just say, hey, if you mind sharing it, maybe just mention this or whatever. And that can be all the difference. And I've said this many times that the best way to be introduced to someone as a guy is to be introduced by another female to another female. If I walk up and say, hi, I'm Ryan, I look like a creep. So having someone else share your message is important. So having other people share it. So even if it's not just the people you're interviewing, if you can have your friends or people that you're connected with in the community to share your content for you, it goes a longer way than just me pushing my own content out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's why, and be creative. Maybe think of a way to that's why we see so many contest giveaways on Instagram, share this post, tag someone, those are all really great tactics to get more eyeballs on your page. It doesn't have to be something big, right? But just being able to come up, if I'm going to do a video with a winery and we're focusing on a specific wine brand, then let's give a little promo code that's specifically on that video post so that then people can, if they want to buy the wine, they can use that. You find a way to sort of track to get other people sharing that content. So it's just figuring out what that content is and then how best to promote it and get other people to put that out there as well, because it goes back to exactly what you said, that whole friends and family. People trust that. You trust an opinion from a friend and family more than just some random stranger telling you. So.
Mostly. I hope you do. And so your family is, I guess. So I want to go back to the self-promotion part of it. And I want to go back to your news anchor days. I think that one of the underutilized approaches that agents could be doing is building relationships with news reporters and getting stories, getting out there, and especially if you're doing stuff in the community, what can agents do for that? From your experience, how can you give them advice? Because I've shared this with the agents, and some of them have taken my advice, have gone out there and done it, and they've got on front cover of newspapers, they've gone on the websites for major news outlets just because they shared a story. So what would that look like if someone was to approach you, and how would that work?
I think as a news reporter, whenever something happened that was real estate related, and people are always interested in that because people own houses, they're buying houses, they want to own houses, the market changes. And so as a news reporter, there was always a time when I had to find an expert, right? So one of the first things you could do is, if you can build your social media presence, if you can be creating your own content that already positions you as an authority, as an expert in your industry, and then that's why it's great to work with PR agency, because, or at least find those connections where you can get your name into those newsrooms. Because if you can get your name in there to say, hey, listen, if you have a story where you need a comment, I have an expert here that would be great to talk about this. And then news reporters are busy, we're busy. We get the assignment the morning, and you've got to get the story done by 6 o'clock. So if you've done a story with an expert once and they were good, then you're going to call them again. You're going to keep that contact. And then you're going to be the go-to person. And then, maybe people, a portion of the audience is going to see that on TV, but then that's going to get leveraged online. And then hopefully, if you're a real estate agent who's done an interview on TV, you're going to get a copy of that and put that out on your social media for even more people to see. And then it just sort of snowballs from there. Same thing if you're doing, some community events, something that really it has a value for the community. Weekends are the best time because you're always looking for stories on weekends. In news, that if you can really create something, a great community event that would be worthwhile, for a local newspaper, radio, anything to cover, then create those. Write up a media release, or get someone to write a media release for you and send that and let them know, or send an email. Because anytime you can create those connections and become sort of that go-to person, then that's going to just give you a wider audience.
And it positions you as the expert again. If you're going to try to sell yourself to the community, you can say, as featured on, as seen on, you can share that, and people are going to recognize you're not just an agent who cares about just selling a house. They know that there's more to you than that, and it helps create credibility.
Absolutely.
I also want to point out, because you mentioned you are a past client of mine, that I want to point out that some people may be afraid to reach out to people in the news or in the media, thinking that they're these magical, untouchable people who are these
No.
But it's like, you're normal people. When we met years ago, like you're just like you and me, you're normal people, and you have a normal life outside of what you do for your work. That's your job, and your life is your life. And some people may think that, I can't talk to these people. I'm a nobody, or no one's going to want to hear anything. It's like, you're a normal person.
And
great.
What's the worst? It never hurts to ask, because the worst someone could say is no. That's always my philosophy. I will always ask. I will always, offer a suggestion or whatever. You always put yourself out there. The worst that someone could say is no, and then maybe they remember that name next time. So.
So if you can give one piece of advice, one last takeaway for someone who's kind of getting started, or maybe want to taking their online presence to a next level, what would you give as far as advice goes?
Don't be afraid to put yourself out there, to, figure out a way to connect with people in an authentic way, to show your personality, to share those stories, and do it in that real way. We've been talking about this all throughout. People never try to go in with the hard sell. Go in and create something that's unique to your brand, that people will connect with and find value in. And, a lot of that starts with finding your brand voice. What do you want to be seen as? What is your voice? What are your goals for social media, your goals for your business?
Awesome. And we recently started a new segment called Your Best Book. So what's one great book that has made an impact, or you think would make an impact on our viewers?
Okay. So I'm going to say not a book, because I think your viewers will find this super valuable. there is a blog that you can follow. It's called later.com. It's actually what I use to schedule my social media posts through. They have an app that you can use and a scheduling service, but they have a blog, and they're up on all of the trends when it comes to social media and content creation and social media marketing and all of the features. And so there's always value in there. And even if you sign up for their newsletter, I don't sign up for a lot of newsletters, but I sign up for theirs. So I think if you're looking to sort of take it to the next level, there's a lot of great free resources on that blog. So later.com.
Very valuable. So we appreciate that. So what's the best way for our viewers to check out what you're doing, what you're up to, and how can they get a hold of you?
So brittdixon.ca is my website. You can find me on all of the social media platforms at Britt Dixon Media. And yeah,
awesome.
That's where I am. Yeah.
We'll put the links to that in our video below so people can check that out. And I really appreciate you being on the show. And thank you for doing this. I know, like I said, you bring a different viewpoint and a different perspective to things. And I know our viewers are really going to appreciate that. So thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for checking out today's episode. If you'd like more videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page and our other social media channels. Looking forward to bringing you more great content like this, and happy farming.